thought we'd start off where we left off yesterday of how we met, like our first time meeting each other. And we're gonna do a little reenactment because we were picture matched. So
That's so cute.
we're gonna tell you our first impression. So we were basically in our communities and we were handed this envelope with like, use your future spouse. So you wanna go first?
So for me, yeah, it was really like, oh, an American. There was only one thing I really didn't want. But as I said yesterday, three of my brothers went through the blessing, and two of them was blessed an American before, and both of them broke. So I'm like, yeah, I'm open for anything, but it looks like God really wanted to make it work. So yeah.
And my first impression was Norway. I had never thought of Norway. I was like, hey, where is Norway? So look, I did know about the Oslo Accords. Like, I was studying international relations, but I was like, just where is it on the map? And I was like, oh, he's probably tall, like that. And I also felt in his eyes, I felt like there was something about him that he was really sincere, and that was important to me. All right, so we're going to show you, dun 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 dun, our pictures. This is the pictures we got. So, yeah. So Alexander got this picture. I was 21. Okay.
Probably 19 when I took that picture.
This is actually the picture he took for that 2007 blessing where he didn't end up going, the one where I was there but didn't get matched. So that's the picture if he had, yeah. Because you have to take pictures for all the blessings. Yeah, and then this is how they were lined up. So picture matching, we're gonna leave these out so you guys can see these later. But all the brothers were on the wall and then true parents were walking around with the sisters' pictures. And the person in Europe, he was in the room and so he took a lot of pictures. So we got these so we can see where my picture is and where Alexander, we circled him. So, but that's how we were matched. And it's kind of a very, I think, I shared this like when true parents kind of brought this to families, right? And putting it on for parents. Sorry, we should set a timer for ourselves. We want to keep on good on time. But I think really the parents and family matching, the way it is really kind of the ideal, God's original plan. And a lot of true parents matching, like why they started matching again was because they felt that a lot of parents were just sort of looking externally or matching with practical or who they knew, but wanting to show, they did these series of, they called it Chanilguk matchings, and this was one of them. They're in of like people who were willing to kind of be open to be matched to anybody, and to show this kind of concept of how can we think beyond nation, religion, like nationality, race, and that's where that started. But then True Mother ended that to go back to this kind of original, really true parent, not true parents, our parents guiding us, family matching. So yeah, we're going to share just a little bit about this. We got our pictures, and then 2 weeks later we met.
Not just met, but got matched, blessed. Yeah, so as I told you yesterday too, it was a very big thing in Norway. So Norway had like a big group of participants going to the blessing. So, which for me also was good because I'm going with a lot of second gen that I know. Yeah, we went to New York. Even though, as I said, that was my kind of, when I saw the picture and the information about Jana, it was a little bit different when I actually met her face to face for the first time after coming out of the elevator in New York, the New Yorker. Yeah, I just felt that really God is telling me this is the one that I have chosen for you. I've really tried to reaffirm my my belief, and that this is what I'm going to share my life with. So I really have to commit to this and set my will to make this work.
Yeah, and for me, I remember when I was like kind of waiting in line before he came, I met some sisters, and I was like, "Where are you guys from?" And they're like, "Norway," and I'm like, oh, "My match is from Norway," and then they're like, "Oh," because then they started to realize, and then I just saw in the distance this like shadow of tall figures coming from nearby, and I'm like, "Oh, that's probably the brothers, right?" Because the sisters were just there, and I was like, just giving myself a minute, and then I turned, and then it is awkward. Like the whole drive up from DC to New York, I was like, man, it's gonna be awkward. How can I not make it awkward? I'm like, I'm just gonna embrace the awkwardness. and so it's like we first met eyes, and I was like, hey, what would I normally say? And I'm like, how was the flight? Did you watch any movies? And that kind of broke the ice of like, we're just getting to know each other, right? Like, how would you approach someone? And I think something for me that, kind of like he said, the big challenge was someone that was American. And for me, I had at that point been on STF for like 3 years. It had been a huge turning point in my life. And it was really important experience to me. And so when I had been thinking about like who I would ask my parents to look for, I was like, look for someone who's gone through that STF experience, because they would get it. In my mind, that's how I was thinking. They would get it. But actually, that's something he hasn't done. He had to go to the army in Norway. That's like mandatory military service. And so it was something that was weighing on me a bit, like how are we gonna relate in that way? And so one of the first things we did after we met was we went to Starbucks. And he was like, ew, this is like way too sweet. Everything in America is like so sweet. And then we went to a bookstore because I knew he really liked reading, and so I was hearing about the books he liked. And then I shared my experience on like why STF was so important to me. And he really listened, like we were talking about yesterday, listening. But it hit me in that moment, and this is a big matching advice I give a lot. It's like, sometimes the quality of what we're looking for, we think it's like, oh, he has to go to STF, oh, it has to be this. But actually what I was looking for was someone who would value my experience, how important it was, not make fun of it, not criticize it or question it. And that has nothing to do with whether you went to STF or not. Because I had a lot of friends who went and had a rough experience, were very critical. So the fact that he listened to me and could like see how important it was to me, that was actually the quality I was looking for. That makes sense?
Yes,
So
yes.
think about that too for yourself and things. So yeah, that was like our first time together, and then we had a few days and then we got blessed. But it was like in those moments we were kind of key things that were helping us feel like, okay, we can move forward, even though there's so much we had to learn. And I do want to say there were a few people who were picture matched that decided not to go through, because that we had that time in those days, right, to their match, but they didn't feel like they could get blessed. So even though it's kind of like very short, there was a lot of time to try to, in a way, like we had to approach it really seriously. I did want to say one experience about the blessing was, again, what we shared, like his impression of me and oh no, she's American, it took like 2 or 3 years to really hear that. Like I used to ask him like, what'd you think when you got my picture? And he'd be like, oh, you know. And I'm like, no, I don't know. Like, tell me. And I understand why, like it was really hard. But, so I had no idea, right, we were getting blessed. But I remember the moment where we turned to each other and it was the blessing vows. Back then there were 4 vows, now it's all combined into one. But it was like, we have to say yes, right? So you hear the vow, and then you just say yes. That's what. And I was like looking around, I was all like, oh my gosh, we're blessed. And then I suddenly looked in his eyes, when we were saying yes, and I lost, what's it called, the weak in my knees, like this, because he was so serious. He was like his yes, like this commitment. And okay, what's behind that is everything he just said, right? Like, I'm scared, this could break, but I'm going forward, like I trust that God knows what he's doing, right? We're gonna make this work. And I felt that. And for me, I felt like I was still in this like, oh, it's the blessing, like still this concept, but it was like, oh, this is my man. Before I always pictured like somebody, just a fuzzy picture. Who's the husband gonna be? Like, oh, it's really real. It's Alexander, and how serious he is. It kind of like brought me down to like, okay, this is our blessing. This is like, it's us now. And no more concepts of all those things. How are we gonna make this? Is there anything else you want to add there? So we wanted to pull up the blessing vow as it is now, and I'll have Alexander read it. Like, it used to be 4 points when we got blessed, and then we said yes to each of those 4 points. Now it's 1, and then you say yes or nay. But it's often read in Korean by True Mother, so not everyone always knows what the words are. So we wanted to.
The blessing vow. As families try to realize Heavenly Parents' ideal of creation, do you promise to become eternal couples who will inherit the tradition and established by true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind, and perfect ideal families will strive to realize Chanuguk?
Any thoughts? Maybe 2 or 3 people. What comes out when you hear this? The blessing vow.
Strive.
Huh?
Strive.
Strive. Yeah, the word, yeah. Any other words, phrases jump out? Eternal.
Hope.
Hope. What'd you say? Hope?
Hope.
Hope.
Inheriting tradition.
Eternal vision? Wait, which tradition? Yeah. Does this sound like, what's different about this than like marriage vows?
It serves a higher purpose.
Serves a higher purpose? Anything else?
Eternal.
Eternal? Yeah, it's not death do us part. It's eternal. Yeah. It's also talking about like raising your family. It's in the vows. Like it's not just a couple, but your family. So yeah, we wanted to put that up on the screen as we share a little bit about life after the blessing and like where like certain things of these, you know, what's Heavenly Parents' ideal? What's the tradition? Like these words and really the questions that we went through. I remember having this little pink book where I would like write down true parents' words and like try to make them real. Like what does that mean, like in practice? And just one funny story early on in our marriage that I felt like a lot of stuff, like I said, I started where I was very insecure because my parents did not have a good relationship, and he came from super lovey-dovey parents. It was very healing, actually. They were like super affectionate in public and everything. And Alexander is the one who taught me so much about true love. And one story, I just remember when we were first living together, and some of you probably heard this story before, but I was really upset about something. I can't remember what it was. And I was sitting on the couch just mad, you know, like, and like he came over and he sat down next to me and he just we're together. I have to tell this story about myself. He just reached out and he rubbed my back. And in my mind, when he did that, I was like, I was blown away because my concept of like love, it's like fight or flight, right? Okay, he's mad at me. I'm either gonna like, this would be me, like I'm scared, I don't wanna, you know, or it's like, okay, why are you mad? Let's fight about this, right? But all it was like, you're mad, I'm here. And then I read this quote from True Father that said, true love travels the shortest distance. And I was like, oh, that's the shortest distance. Like it's actually right there. But that's really hard to do. And that's it got my full respect. Because up until that moment, I had been a little judgmental, a little bit like, oh, I spent all this time on STF and all these things. But more and more, I was so humbled by him, his ability to share. I felt like I spent a lot of time learning to share like food and things on STF and like the last. But he grew up the middle child of 7, right? Like for him, it's so natural. I just think over and over, he taught me so much about true love.
Yeah, and talking about that, I wouldn't say double-edged sword, but I felt like through the beginning of our life, I would be giving away more than I received. I mean, that was difficult, and even though there is many times I really want to say something. I said communication was a hard part for me, but rather than try to focus on those times, I would start just forgiving her and keep moving, because I thought it was easier to forgive than to keep it in. And even though, I mean, I might not have shared it all with her, but in my own mind, I was forgiving her for whatever reason it was about our life. And it was not just like one time, but it was throughout the years, a couple of years. How many years? I don't know.
8 years.
Yeah.
So we wanted to share, because we're going to go into we're purposely sharing the tough stuff, the tough moments, because every time I talk at these workshops, I'm like, what do you guys want to hear? They're like, challenges. We want to hear the challenges. So we're going into that. And I own up, like I always say, I'm the difficult one. It's me. And a lot of times I'm the one who comes to these things and share, but this is my teacher. He learned so much. And you guys know a little bit of my testimony from yesterday, why I was going through a lot of challenges about love and what it is. So we brought a lot of our books so you can actually see pictures. We're going to have them out. Albums like from our wedding. We have lots of happy times. We're going to focus on the more challenges. This is a book my mother-in-law made. This is I made. It's going to give you the play-by-play, especially our long distance before we were together. We had a lot of back and forth. Alexander made around a lot of our trips. And then this is a book the Norwegian community made when we moved in 2020, so 10 years in Norway. All of these are before the kids. It was about 4 years before we had our first son. And here you can see them, our little 10 and 11-year-olds when they were like toddlers and really cute, like Ruben's age. So we'll put those out so you can see the whole kind of glimpses of our life. But going back into the more challenges, like underline, we did a lot of fun things together. We spent a lot of time serving the community too, which you can see in there as a couple. But there were these, I think, these reoccurring underlying challenges around communication and me like kind of opening my heart to really give love. And probably the hardest point in our marriage for me, like Alexander was really bearing a lot of harder things that he was sort of going through. And I felt it, but like we didn't talk about it enough, probably then, little bits. But around that time, like this is why I say 8 years, Alexander's father passed away. And it was, as anyone can imagine, losing a parent, it's like really difficult. And you don't know how to navigate that, how you're going to grieve. And basically, he didn't want to talk about it, right? It's really hard to talk about. And as a wife, I felt like, my gosh, this is like wife role 101. Like, I need to be there. You need to share everything with me. Let me help you. And the fact that he didn't want to talk, I felt like, what is my purpose? Like here, you know? And I really had to learn, this is what I was learning, is like, it's not just about how I think I should love, right? It's what does he need? How does he need to grieve? He needs to not be able to talk about it, and I need to give him that space. And it was like, I think that was like this really intense time, but it kind of like brought us really to this level together, because before I feel he had been investing in a lot of ways, forgiving me, letting me, the way I needed to be loved, he really knew that and like put that first. But I had been, I don't know, slow. and developing. And so we went through this really intense experience, but I felt like it brought us solid. Like I can say that like I felt like we built this foundation, like this is ours, like kind of this unbreakable bond. That makes sense? Because we were like on the same of like how we really had invested in our relationship and understanding each other. And then what happened, this was such an intense time, it's like right when, I think we just had the Sunghwa, our younger boys were like toddlers, 2 and 3. My dad got a sudden like hemorrhaging in his brain, and so he went into like, yeah, basically like he had to do brain surgery and all these things, and so at that point I was in a really bad place with my dad. I hadn't talked to him for several years, and my mom was like, just go and serve your dad. And I'm like, oh. And that, you know, it was a hard time, but part of me realized in that experience why it was so hard for him to talk about it, because I was kind of in shock, and I was like, my dad's always the strong, buff guy, like I could not imagine him sick. And even saying it out loud felt like, no, because that makes it real, right? And so I got a little bit more of what was really going on in Alexander's heart. And that experience when I went to just serve my dad, he was living in Tanzania at the time, and I got off the plane and it was like, all of this resentment that I felt for all these years, this resentment that was like an acid in me. Like when I would think about my dad and stuff would spread, I just felt so angry at him. It was like it got wiped away. And I can't even explain why. I think a little investment I'd made years over years, but I had never expected that. I had never expected true forgiveness. And like the way Alexander talks about being able to forgive over and over again, that was hard for me, because I had still like just thought I would have to live my whole life and not really forgive my dad. But then I suddenly felt it, and I was like, the way you kind of really know you've forgiven is you're able to talk about it without all that anger and all that coming up, and I can talk about it. And that's why I can stand here and give these testimonies now that went through that. But that experience, like both our couple, the 8-year experience, and then that kind of forgiveness with my dad, that shifted us from being like our family and couple and community to really working on this bigger, wider level, nationally and internationally with BFM. So there was like this liberation that happened of, I was no longer blaming, right? And I was really like, what are we creating together? I could really focus on this ideal, and I think that's what opened up, and I started working on with Europe in the Blessed Family Department there and traveling a lot.
Yeah, that experience and change, as I said, it was very noticeable also for me, which also made it easier for me slowly but surely to be able to talk more about my emotional state with her. So yeah, that did really help our blessed life. Also on Jana taking on a more public role for the BFM in Europe, it gave me an opportunity to do something I also wanted, because I wanted to support the Providence in some way, but I don't really enjoy public speaking, and yeah, like these situations like this. That's one of my least favorite things to do.
That's how much he loves you guys.
So, but while she was going out, I would be home with the kids and taking care of them for usually weekends, just by myself. And one time, I can remember like putting the boys to bed. My second youngest, that time the youngest, is like picking his nose all the time. And I'm like, what are you doing? it hurts. A few more minutes of it, and it's like my older one is like, oh yeah, I think you put the rock in his nose, and it's like 10 p.m. I'm like, oh well, let's go to the ER. And Yana is like just texting, oh yeah, I'm back. She's just landed, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just at the ER. Might pick you up. But yeah, so I felt I could be myself and really do something I like, being with the kids and helping Yana being able to support greater good for the Providence by sharing her stories and other things when she was going on her BFM trips. And it was a lot of different travels throughout the years that she did. But it was also one where she went to Albania, and I actually got to be part of that. That was probably the first one I joined her to go to. I didn't have any big function other than actually being there and just. So for me, that was also very big to be able to see what she is able to do, her work and how she's working, and to see the fruit of me being able to support her in a way that it's small things, but it's still very big because she's able to feel free and really can pour out her love to other people, second gen, first gen, and explain more about the blessing, which has been the event's kind of area of expertise.
So it's just, it's nice to hear, for him to be able to share that, because I always feel that when I go by myself to places, there's like, you can't see him, but Alexander's always there and in my mind and in my heart, and the boys at home, and it's really hard as a parent. It feels wrong to like get on a plane away from your kids. There's like something that really but because he can be home with them, it's like I can be there with you. And every time I'm up here, I always think that like, you guys and your stories are gonna be what our boys hear, right? It's like this ongoing kind of cycle investment. So it's part of our family, but we couldn't do it without our unit being really united. So I wanted to just kind of conclude this a little bit with sharing more about the depth of what the blessing is, like all of these investment that we've brought in of like, what does it really mean to live out that blessing vow? What does it mean to be eternally committed, right? Inherit this tradition, raise our families. And those are some of the solid parts of it internally, right? We kept growing. But I think a huge reason why I got involved in BFM was I had a lot of questions and a lot of trying to answer questions for my friends and family. Like I shared my own journey, but like my brother, for example, he really struggled with the blessing. What's the difference with blessing and marriage? We went to a lot of Christian schools, and all the Christian families seemed so happy and together, and our parents were like, psh. We're like, what? Is there really anything special? And then why do we talk about second gen? What's so special? We're not better than anyone. Why is it so, what's this difference, And I remember really trying to ask that question a lot, and that's kind of through a lot of prayer, True Parents' words, listening to guidance, and then later teaching about the blessing. That's how I learned so much about it, and supporting couples in their journey. So I just wanted to share a little, and we might need a little more time. It's okay. Okay. Because that Albania workshop, so that was 2019. It's the last workshop we did in Europe before we moved to America. And so basically in Europe, I was the assistant to the BFD director, and in America, I became the BFM director. And so it's like working on these continental levels. every region has a BFM director. And in that Albania workshop, we went because I had to give a certain talk, but the whole workshop was young first generation from Albania that were going to go to the 2020 blessing. So most of them already matched, and most of them were about 8 or 10 years younger than us, and we were the only second gen in the whole workshop couple. So we were a staff couple, there was older second gen, first gen giving the lectures, and then everyone else was young first generation. And I remember that workshop was like a huge, I felt like I traveled back in time and was experiencing what my parents experienced when they joined. Because like, a lot of us that are second gen, we grew up going to workshops or do 100K or things, and we're kind of like, yeah. Like, it's like, but we would do 100K with them, and there was like such deep revelations they were sharing, and I'm like, wait, where did you read that? Like, what? Like, well. And then I remember they would talk about true parents, and they're like, yeah, man, every time I bring up true parents, my mom's so mad. She's like, what about me? And I was like, what? Like, our parents are always talking about true parents and how much they love them, but like their parents were like, you know, really, it was this huge rift in their family it was creating. And then I remember the testimony time, and we were listening to the testimony, and there was one sister who stood up, and she said she had this dream where all her ancestors came to her and just like kyombe and bow, and how she felt like, wow, like she was saying how she's struggling about deciding to go to the blessing, and how her ancestors are so grateful for her. She's like this legend for her lineage. And that really stood out, that point, because I felt like, oh, that's it. We need to talk about this more. A lot of us as second gen, we don't realize how much our parents had to go through. Maybe a little, maybe dynamic with their grandparents, but we don't realize all the steps and like the ownership they had to take in deciding this. And it hit me then. I'm like, you know, when you think about it from God's view, the whole world is eventually going to be blessed families, right? That was originally the plan. We're all back in God's lineage. First generation, there's only one first generation. You are legends for your lineage. Legends. To take and change to God's lineage, only one generation really does that. Does that make sense? Yeah. We think the world, it's all first generation, but that's where it's going. And like, there's so much respect and understanding in like the steps. And so for like the steps of that changing lineage process, we can show, I think it's the next slide, or it's the one after. Yeah, this one, yeah. A lot of times true parents talk about it as like this olive tree in grafting, and I don't know anything about trees or gardening, but I just tried to find an image of it. But like this whole process that you have to go to like take one olive tree and engraft it to the stronger one. And the more you learn about the blessing and the steps, like to become a blessed couple, to change the lineage, there's 5 steps they have to go through. Does anybody know this? Want to say what the steps are? Or maybe I'll ask the Irwins. Can you shout out? You want to say it? Or I can say it, but I don't want to say it. It's the holy wine ceremony, then the blessing ceremony, right? Hearing the blessing prayer from true parents, and then reading the blessing vow and saying yes to it. Then there's an indemnity stick ceremony, which is restoring this, the violence between men and women historically, right? Like restoring that. Then there's a 40-day separation, and then the 3-day ceremony, which is starting their family life together with God, and it's restoring the fall, Adam and Eve. That's all the steps they have to do. For second gen, for blessed children going to the blessing, you become a blessed couple when you listen to true parents' vow and say yes. Think how like simple that is, right? The only reason though it's simple is because of that foundation from your parents. And I really learned a lot about this, especially in supporting intergen couples, because the idea of this lineage, right, is continuing the lineage that everyone will eventually become blessed families. But when you have an intergen couple where the first generation and a second generation are going to the blessing together, this was started by true parents. The first generation because of need to change the lineage, the second gen goes through these steps together with the first generation. They don't need to, but they're doing it for the sake of their partner to create this together. That takes so much ownership and so much like really owning the blessing process. And I think from a lot of times when we have questions about like, well, why is it so like blessed children and first generation, what's the difference and all those things? And I think a lot of times people don't understand the depth of what intergen couples go through and that process, and because of what does this mean, right, for the future and owning it. And the more that I really learned about the blessing, and especially this idea of the olive tree, I was like, oh, this is so deep. Because everything that Alexander and I just shared about all of that, like getting to that point of 8 years and all of this solid work, God can claim that. That is God's, because it's connected to God's lineage. When I talk with a lot of my Christian friends about this point in lineage, right, they believe when they go into spirit world that we separate, right? It's all about your connection individually with God. The blessing and that vow, it's like everything you do as a family. Everything you do, it brings, right? You go to spirit world as a family, right? It's like the things you do happen, they go down. Anything you do, it passes down to your descendants, right? And your ancestors also benefit from it. Like it's a whole different orientation of like family salvation, not just individual salvation. And the way that I feel like, again, kind of visuals that really helped understand this is I looked up olive trees because, yeah, I was curious. Why do your parents always talk about olive tree? So if you show the next slide, this is kind of like once you've engrafted an olive tree, it starts out, oh, there's one before, it starts out as a sprout, and then it starts to grow into this stronger tree. And next slide, and it keeps growing. So, right, the idea of a blessing, right, in the tradition, as we get more and more, continue to get blessed more and more, the way trees grow, right, is they grow wider. The roots are deep and strong, and then the tree grows wider and wider. That's how you see the age of a tree, is when you cut it and the rings are wide. So the more that, again, we continue this tradition, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren going through the blessing, it just gets wider and wider, thicker and thicker tradition, until, next slide, hashtag goals, right? Look at how, that's a 3,000-year-old olive tree. That's insane. The way they're so wide is because the roots are so strong. The roots are also really far and they go everywhere. So a lot of our experiences and what we're talking about here, we're creating that roots too, and for the lineage. And it's like, it's hard to talk about it in concept, you know, but I just want to really encourage you to keep asking these questions. Like, part of why I could get such deep realization and experience is because I asked a lot of difficult questions, and I kept searching until I found an answer that really, like, not just the surface, right, that really hit. And so that's what I want to encourage and leave you with the blessing, and really, as much as we can share about meaning and value, and I can share these experiences, what does it mean to you? What does the blessing mean to you? That's always the first question I ask anyone who's preparing for the blessing, right? Personally. And if you don't feel like you have an answer or you don't know, like, keep looking for it. And then, I'm just going to go into, like, these are our reflection questions. What does the blessing mean to you? And then think, what does the blessing mean to society, culture, the world we're in right now? And then finally, what does the blessing mean to God? So these are going to be your time. We're going to reflection now. I think we have those questions. We can put them up. But yeah, we share just glimpses from our story, but the real power is keep seeking and get those answers for you. And that's how you own it and create your blessed life, right? Everybody's looks different. Everybody's life is unique, and it starts with really owning what's the value for you. All right. Thank you.